esas verdiği bilgiler için teşekkür ediyorum. Bir müminin dini hayatında ibadetlerin fevkalade önemli yeri var. Ama ibadetler sadece şekilden ibaret değil. İbadetlerin insan ruhunda hasıl edilmesi gereken netice önemlidir. Muhittin Bey'in başta okuduğu oruçla ilgili meşhur ayet-i kerimenin sonu şöyle biter. Sizden evvelkilere farz olduğu gibi size de oruç farz kılındı. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ Umulur ki takva üzere okursunuz. Oruçtan amaç takvadır. Takva, kişinin Cenab-ı Hak karşısındaki takındığı saygılı tavır. Onu büyük bilme, onun huzurunda her zaman kendisini onun huzurunda hissetme duygusu, düşüncesidir. Sultan Veled Hazretleri de böyle demek ki Tuhfetü's Saimin diye böyle bir manzumesi varmış. Hoş bir tevafuk. Bundan 15 sene kadar evvel ben bu metne bir temas ettim. Muhittin Bey'den daha söylemedim. İzmir'de Yeni Asır gazetesi çıkar, orada Ramazan sayfalarında ben uzun süre yazılar yazdım. Hatırlayamadım nereden elime geçti, bir izini sürdüm kitabın. Marmara İlahiyat Fakültesi kütüphanesinde buldum ve her gün bir beyti açıklayarak, benimki tamam değil, metnin tamamının neşri değil, bir kısmı ağır geliyor, tasavvufi yönlerini daha da bir genişleterek, Ahmet Remzi dedenin şehrinin üzerine bir de ben şerh yapma cüretinde bulunarak yayınlamıştım. Bu yayın sonra da benim ibadetlerin iç anlamı kitabımın içerisinde bulunmaktadır. Tuhfetü's Saimin, oruçlulara hediye, daha kısaltmak için de ona oruçluya armağan diye bir başlık koymuştum. Vesile oldu. Bunu da böylece duyurmuş olalım. Evet, tekrar Muhittin Bey'e teşekkür ediyoruz. Efendim, ikinci konuşmacımız Profesör Doktor Ümit Safi Bey. Güleç simalı, güzel yüzlü, güzel gönüllü bir insan. Çok sevdiğimiz kendisini. Görüp tanıyıp da sevmeyen de pek çıkmaz zannediyorum. Pek güzel, pek manalı bir başlığı da var tebliğinin. Sultan Veled tırnak içinde onu açıyor. Mevlana'nın aşk şehrinin kapısı Sultan Veled. Böyle bir başlık. Muhteva da almalı bunu zannediyorum. Buyurun birlikte dinliyoruz.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hoş geldiniz. We've been listening to many beautiful stories that tell us about the special relationship of Hazrat Maulana and Sultan Veled. One aspect that I want to emphasize is that in pre-modern societies, we didn't get to just walk in to the courts of a king, and we did not have direct access to God in any religious tradition. There were always intermediaries that stood between people and their king, and intermediaries that stood between humanity and God. They offered intercession and mediation. That mediation is exactly what makes it so remarkable when the kings would receive people directly, and in fact, it's what makes the namaz, the salat, the Muslim prayers, theologically a revolutionary idea, the idea that each person could go directly to Allah. Many of you have heard the analogy of the prophets when he says, "Ana Madinatul Ilm wa Aliyun Babaha." I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate. It doesn't mean that Ali is the only channel, but he's the protected channel. And in the title for this paper, I'm suggesting that it might be useful to think of Maulana as the Madinatul Ishq, as the city of love, and Sultan Veled as the protected channel, as a protected gate through whom we can enter the presence and the barakah of Maulana. When we look at Aflaki, who is the author of Manaqib al-Arifin, the lofty ranks of those who know God intimately, we see a lot of stories whereby the community of Maulana wanted to have access to him, wanted to have more time with him, but Maulana would have preferred to spend his time in prayer or with Shams. Time and time again, we see that the community beseeches Sultan Balad, begs Sultan Balad, and says, please have Hazrat Maulana come to us. Sultan Balad acts as the intermediary, as the source of shafa'at to Maulana. And they tell these stories in some lovely ones, many of which you have heard, and some of which you may not. We know that Maulana goes one day from a sama session to the hammam, to the public bath. And for 7 days and for 7 nights, he sits in the khazine, the hot water section of the bath. And the people are astonished and surprised as to the level of asceticism and discipline that Maulana is showing. And they beg Sultan Balad to go and bring Maulana out. And as the title of this paper says, no one but Balad had the ability to speak to him. Balad himself comments on his close relationship with his father. Of course, we know that he spent 50 years sitting at the feet of Hazrat Maulana. He's named after Baha Balad, his grandfather, and he oftentimes repeats statements like, Anta ashbahun nas bi khulqan wa khalqan. You are, this is Maulana speaking to Sultan Balad, of all of the people, you are the one that's most similar to me in your nature and in your mannerisms. Of course, we see these kinds of statements also in the Ahlul tradition. I want to come to a story that we heard yesterday and give us some more opportunity to reflect on it. It talks about when Sultan Balad was a baby and how he would always sleep in the arms of his father, Hazrat Maulana. And when Maulana would get up for namaz, for his prayers, Sultan Balad would cry. And in order to keep him from crying, Hazrat Maulana would put his own breast in the mouth of the baby. Now, this is an odd image, right? And Aflaki goes on to say that paternal compassion was so great that by the command of God, pure milk would flow until that baby, Sultan Balad, had had its fill from that lion of ma'na, of inner meaning, and would sleep, just as clear water used to well up from the finger of Rasulullah, of the Messenger of God. You can imagine why many scholars look upon these kinds of stories with suspicion and shake their head. They dismiss them as merely hagiographical and as hard to believe. I would like to suggest that we should have a deeper way of reading these kinds of stories. These are stories that are not from the formal genre of tarikh or history, but rather from tazkireh or hagiography, the lives of saints. And tazkireh comes from the Arabic root of dhakara, which is to remember. These are stories to help us remember the ones who remember Allah. They have their own genre, and they use humor, they use stories, they use anecdotes, they use paradox to convey a deeper meaning to us. So what's this deeper meaning? The deeper meaning is not whether milk can come from the breast of a man, but rather whether ashq, whether love, can come from the heart of a human. It's a reminder for us that the rewards of paradise are not just about there and then, in the hereafter, but they're also to be found here and now, as long as we are in the presence of those whose hearts are the eternal Kaaba. As Jamal Nur Hoja so often reminds us, the rivers of paradise, including the river of milk, flow in the hearts of these folks here and now. And the real key to this story is the last word, the mention that springs of water would flow from the finger of the Messenger of God. Sultan Balad and Hazrat Maulana had grown up with stories of the previous Sufis, including the stories of Attar. And if we read Attar's Mantab-ul-Khair, the Conference of the Birds, in the little red introduction, there's a beautiful story about a mother who jumps into a stream to save her infant who's drowning. When the mother saves the baby and brings her out, she puts her own breast into the mouth of that baby, and then in the middle of the story, Attar inserts the image of the Prophet. And he begs of Hazrat Paygambar, Shir de ma ra z dastan karam. Nurse us, suckle us from your breast of generosity. Right? So going back to the story of Aflaki, about the relationship between Maulana and Sultan Balad, we see the same metaphor being used, not about the Prophet, but about Maulana, who is referred to, of course, as Farzand Jan Paygambar, the offspring of the soul of the Prophet. As the Prophet had nurtured the faithful community from his own heart, now the offspring of the Prophet's soul, Maulana, comes to nurture his own spiritual offspring from his own chest. The stories of Maulana and Sultan Balad oftentimes also have a deeply human, parental aspect to them. We know that one day Maulana comes across Sultan Balad when Sultan Balad is down and depressed and saddened. And Maulana asks him, son, why are you feeling like this? And Sultan Balad says, I don't know. And it's usually like this. Oftentimes when we're feeling sad and down, we're not even sure as to the exact reason. Maulana doesn't say a word. He goes inside the house and gets his jacket. You know, the winters get rather cold in Konya. So he had a jacket that was lined with wolf skin and wolf fur. He turns it inside out and covers his head, so he looks like a wolf. And he comes up to Sultan Balad and goes, boo! And Sultan Balad snaps out of his mood that he's in and starts laughing. And then Maulana asks him, Baha Balad, if you have a gentle beloved who's always next to you, is always joking with you and causing you joy, and then all of a sudden covers her face and says, boo, are you going to be afraid? And Sultan Balad says, no, I wouldn't be afraid. And then Maulana says, that beloved that is causing you immense joy, and because of him, your heart has always been in a state of expansion. Bless you. That same one is the one that is now bringing you sadness. All is from him. All is him. It's because of him that you overflow in these emotions, good and bad. Why do you allow yourself to become saddened and sink into this depression? Sultan Balad says, after I heard my father's words, my state, my hal changed. I became like a fresh blossoming rose, and never again in my life did I express that kind of depression. The reason that Sultan Balad is able to introduce us to the mysteries of Maulana is because he is there. He is there in the morning, he's there at night. He has the kind of family access to Maulana that no one else would have had. Yesterday we heard the beautiful story of how Sultan Balad begged Maulana to be allowed to go into Halbat, into a retreat. Maulana said, Bahauddin, For those of us who are Muhammadi, right? Not those of us who are Muslim, those of us who are Muhammadi. There's lots of Muslims who are not yet at the rank of being Muhammadi. There's no need for khalwat. Right? Nevertheless, Sultan Balad persists and eventually is permitted to spend 40 days in khalwat. When he comes out, Maulana asks him what he saw, and he says that he saw lights as tall as a majestic mountain. And he heard a voice from the realm unseen repeating, Inna Allah yaghfiru dhunub jami'an. Indeed, God forgives sins, all of them. Maulana says to his son, Bahauddin, it's exactly as you say, in fact, 100,000 times more so. But out of respect for Shariat, and out of respect for Hazrat Paygambar, who brings us the Shariat, do not speak of this with people. Because these people, if they hear about these realities, they're going to wreak havoc on the world. In reality, many of them are not fully human. They're really donkeys. They're just masquerading as human. Now, to know that account and understand that account, again, we have to remember the context in which Maulana and Sultan Balad were raised. They had been raised with the stories of the earlier saints, and they had been raised with the story of Sana'i and Attar. And it's in one of the stories of Fariduddin Attar from Tazkiratul Awliya that we hear about the great early saint, Abul Hasan al-Kharavani. One night when Kharavani is in prayer, he hears the voice of God thundering at him, Abul Hasan, do you want me to tell people what I know about you? Do you want me to tell people about all of your shortcomings? And Kharavani says to Allah, Parvardigara, my Lord, do you want me to tell people what I know about your infinite rahmat and your unending love, that you are going to forgive everyone? And the voice of God comes back to Kharavani saying, I won't tell, and you don't tell. This has been always a part of the Sufi tradition, that God is going to keep his saints hidden and even act as the Sattar, the one who covers up the faults. If the saints will, to some extent, keep the extent of God's ultimate mercy hidden from people who may not be ready to handle it. In the stories of Sultan Balad, in the teachings of Sultan Balad, we see echoes and hear echoes of Maulana. Even in studying his poetry, we see sometimes entire lines of Maulana showing up. Those of us who love the writings of Hazrat Maulana know poems like Hamrang Jama'at Sho Ta Lizzat Jan Bini. Come, be of the same essence, the same color as the people, so you can experience the joy of the soul. And we see that the exact same line is used in Sultan Balad, when he says, O you who, like me, are bewildered by God's love, come, be of the same essence as this crowd, Amrangi Jama'acho, so that you too can be shameless in love. This echoing is something that Maulana anticipated, and oftentimes he would tell to his beloved son, Bahauddin, come and look at me, glance at me, nazar, the good nazar. Unfortunately, in today's Turkish culture and Persian culture, we mainly use nazar in a negative sense, as evil eye. But nazar was also that beautiful glance of love. Come, give me the nazar, so that when my seed becomes a tree, you're able to see me and grasp me. Grasp my inner meaning well, real well, and reflect on it, so that you derive pleasure from it, and you can become joyous in it. Know this, that the bodies of the saints and of the prophets is like a tree that gives seed, and not a seed is ever wasted. Every seed will be resurrected and will become a tree in its own light. In other words, what Maulana is saying is asking for Sultan Balad to become transformed through Maulana's nazar so that he too can become a fruit-giving tree in his own light someday. Let me also talk for a second about the ways in which Sultan Balad unlocks the mysteries of Maulana. Many of us know some of the beloved stories of Maulana, one of the favorite ones being the story of the Christian monk who comes from Istanbul to Konya because he had heard tales of Maulana and he had fallen in love sight unseen. This monk arrives in Konya, sees Maulana, and out of respect bows down to him. He lifts up his head and sees that Maulana is still bowing down to him. So he puts his head back down and lifts it up, and he sees that Maulana is still bowing down to him. He says, 33 times I lifted up my head, and 33 times I saw that he was still bowing down to me. And then the monk cries out and says, O Sultan of religion, why do you show such humility to a wretched infidel like me? And Maulana says, this is the teaching of our Sultan, Hazrat Payghambar, who said, blessed is the person who is humble. How would I not show this modesty towards any of God's servants? Now, if we just had that part of the story, we would know about Maulana's modesty. Sultan Balad fills us in on the secret, which is the part that then Maulana goes to see Sultan Balad and says, Balad, this was because of God's aid and the example of the Prophet, Ahadi wa Ahmadi, that we were able to overcome. In other words, it's not until we have the conversation between Maulana and Sultan Balad that we see the way in which Hazrat Maulana is connected to the Prophet not only through external action, but in the sense of having become Muhammadi. In the last minute that I have, I want to make two very simple observations. If we read the Baladnameh of Sultan Balad, we see that he describes the reason that he wrote his book. He says, many people, malasaf, are rather stupid. When they read the Masnavi, they think that it's talking about a lion and a rabbit and a parrot and a king and a handmaid, and they don't realize that this is all inside of us. So I had to write the Baladnameh so that they don't read the Masnavi, they walk the Masnavi, they become the Masnavi, and they reach the goal of the Masnavi. And my last word is this. Sultan Balad says that one day Shams Tabrizi was talking about Hazrat Maulana and said that the inner secret, the ma'na of Hazrat Maulana is just like the ma'na of Islam. And then he cites the hadith of Hazrat Payghambar. Islam began as a stranger and it will return as a stranger. And so blessed are the stranger. The implication is that Maulana too starts out as a stranger and will someday become strange. Nowadays, when many of us look around the world, we see a strange kind of Islam. We see Islam lacking in compassion, and Islam lacking in mercy, and Islam lacking in aql and intellect, and Islam lacking in justice, and Islam lacking the barakah of Hazrat Payghambar, and Islam that's lacking heart and soul. And when many of us look at the understandings of Hazrat Maulana in different places, not here, we see a strange understanding of Maulana. A Maulana without ritual, a Maulana without Islam, a Maulana without the barakah of Hazrat Paygambar, without the Quran, and without grace. May it be that we can enter the city of Ishq through its proper gates, like Sultan Balad, that we can come to understand the timeless message of Maulana and of Islam in light of authentic commentators and transmitters like Sultan Balad, and follow the blessed Muhammadi path of returning to the embrace of the All-Merciful. Wassalamu wassalat ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.